Sorry, you're muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Mr. Vice President.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right. No, thank you very much. I was experiencing some technical difficulties. Okay. Good evening, Your Excellency, Mr. Kamel El-Wazir, Minister of Transport of Egypt, Professor Carlos Lopez, President of the Board of the Conference, Mr. Kwame, General Commissioner of the Africa Road Builders, distinguished managers of road authorities in Africa, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Let me start off by apologizing for President Adesina, who would have liked to be here and actually contacted me personally to make sure that I represented him in the closing remarks. Unfortunately, he has a conflict. As you know, we have the annual meetings proceeding at the same time, and he could not really excuse himself from the meetings with the governors, to be here. So on behalf of President Adesina, I would like to thank the Africa Road Builders for organizing this very important event, which is aimed at improving delivery of road transport infrastructure, which will ultimately lead to improving the quality of life of people in Africa. First, I would like to congratulate His Excellency, Mr. Abdel Fattah AL-SISI, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, for having been awarded the Super Prize Great Builder Trophée Babacar NDIAYE 2020. In the same vein, I would also like to convey my congratulations to His Excellency, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, as the winner of the Africa Road Builders Special Prize. Lastly, it is a great honor for us to have President Adesina be the co-laureate of the Africa Road Builders Special Prize. This prize is a call for us to do more, and we will continue to work tirelessly to achieve the African Development Bank's High Five strategy to light up and empower Africa, to feed, industrialize, and integrate Africa, all with the ultimate objective of improving the quality of life of the people of Africa. As we all know, road transportation is a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable socio-economic growth through its significant contribution to the logistics of goods and people, human development, poverty reduction, and the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Investment in road infrastructure accounts for over half of the recent improvements in economic growth in Africa and has the potential to achieve even more. In this context, the bank has considerable experience in supporting African member countries and the regional economic communities in developing the transport sector. Since 1967, the bank has carried out more than 450 transport projects and invested in more than $30 billion in transport infrastructure. The road subsector, just to demonstrate its importance in our portfolio and our belief of its importance in the lives of all Africans, the road subsector represents 75% of the bank's overall funding in transport. Our focus has been to pave roads, as 50% of our African roads remain unpaved, isolating Africans from basic education, health services, and trade and economic opportunities. Distinguished guests, the continent's greatest asset in the coming years is its ability to harness its rapidly increasing reservoir of human capital. About 40% of Africa's 1 billion people today are below the age of 15. Africa's population could top 1.6 billion by 2030, with nearly 70% of this number being employable people. The youth population is also growing rapidly and is expected to double to more than 830 million people by 2050. So by 2050, most of the continent's 2.3 billion people are expected to be youth. That is why African people, that is Africa's human capital, are truly at the center of the African Development Bank's inclusive and green growth agenda, as well as constituting the lifeblood of our High Five agenda, which includes projects and programs in a wide range of sectors, including the road transport sector. Road transport is the most dominant form of transport in Africa, and from a cost-benefit analysis with other transport forms will remain so into the foreseeable future. This is not to say that multimodal transport systems should not be encouraged, but we're still saying that notwithstanding that, road transportation will continue to be the most significant. It is estimated today to carry up to 90% of freight traffic and close to 100% of passenger traffic. However, the road network remains of insufficient quality, extent, and density. Less than half of Africa's rural population has access to an all-season road. As a result, low accessibility to social services is prevalent in both urban and rural Africa, creating a significant obstacle to poverty eradication, socioeconomic progress, and good quality of life. Ladies and gentlemen, and as Professor Lopez mentioned, the bank also recognizes that regional integration is paramount for Africa, where 40% of the population and 1/3 of the economies are trapped in landlocked countries, and even the coastal countries are best linked by roads. The bank therefore aims to focus on deepening cross-border economic, commercial, and policy linkages, and concentrate on investments in cross-border infrastructure and selective support to regional public goods, and providing assistance and advisory services to increase the effectiveness and relevance of the network of regional and sub-regional economic communities. This should underpin the opportunities expected to be created by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which should begin full implementation in 2021, given the disruption by COVID-19, because it was originally expected to go into full implementation in July of this year. We are all familiar with reports that Africa accounts for only 2% of global trade. Intra-Africa trade is just about 12%, whereas in continents like Europe and Asia, intra-regional trade is between 50 to 70%. So we have a long way to go, but we should look at that really as the potential. We believe and are hopeful that successful implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will change that. According to the bank's estimates, implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement would lead to increase in intra-African trade from 12% up to 15%, may appear modest in 3 to 5 years, but it's a start, resulting in a net gain of $2.8 billion in real income for Africans. Efforts to boost trade within the continent are hampered by significant obstacles, notably excessive administrative and transaction costs and high market segmentation. These pose challenges that require the scaling up of road infrastructure investment to improve connections between and within African countries. Our collective destiny as a viable economic region is tied to breaking down the barriers separating us. That is why the bank is investing heavily in the development and construction of regional corridors throughout the African continent. Over the past 12 years, the bank has financed more than $8 billion of regional transport projects, which continues to also demonstrate and attest to the point that Professor Lopez made, which is there are bankable and viable regional transport corridor projects, and these need to be prioritized as they've already been done by the AU, and we need to commit our resources with innovation to see this come to fruition. As a result, close to 13,000 kilometers of regional highways have been built on 17 road corridors, along with 26 one-stop border post facilities. Let me cite one of the most transformative transport projects funded by the bank so far, just as an example. That is the Mombasa-Nairobi-Addis Ababa corridor. The project has received more than $1 billion from the bank. The road now allows Ethiopia to trade at least 20% of its freight more competitively through the port of Mombasa. Bilateral trade between Ethiopia and Kenya, as a result, has increased by 400%. However, the point about innovation is important. We cannot continue to We cannot continue to develop these critical infrastructure projects to take 5 to 7 years. We have to find a way to compress it. So we have begun to engage with partners like Africa 50 to develop what we call the Infrastructure Asset Recycling Program. And let me demonstrate it using a road example. So if you can imagine that in a country, you have a network of roads. However, traffic on the different roads would be of different densities. So for existing roads that are high capacity on a traffic basis, what we can do is concession that out to the private sector. It's already an existing road, would probably have some upgrade, some widening of that road, but essentially it allows government to monetize the public sector road, get capital, and recycle that capital to other key infrastructure projects, which can be pre-built on a public sector perspective, but with the intention of concessioning that out as well. So essentially you create a revolving system for governments where governments are able to recycle, capital to continue to really implement the infrastructure program. So this is one of the innovations, we are looking at. We are also continuing to build, our PPP capacity. As Professor Lopez mentioned, that this is an important innovation. It's easy to actually give up on this, but we believe that this is going to be very important now, especially with the debt stresses, with a lot of our governments potentially from the massive borrowing they've had to incur to, try to stem, the impact of the global pandemic. So we are going to, increase our capacity. We're going to find more innovative ways to work with governments to implement PPPs, faster. And Professor Lopez captured really, several reasons why, the private sector contribution to the investment in infrastructure is only about 12% today. The most, the best way for me to encapsulate that is private sector. When it's looking at a 25, year concession, is looking for predictability. So ultimately, predictability is not a checklist. So until it has comfort that predictability does exist, we probably would not see the private sector, contributions increase, significantly. And lastly, on the area of innovation, fully agree with Professor Lopez in terms of the importance of harnessing local savings pools in Africa. So we are already working with African sovereign wealth funds, African pension funds, African life insurance companies. We're at very early stage, but given the departure of a lot of global investors back to their home market, we're extending ourselves, sending a very clear message that we need to come together. We would look to really, create the right vehicles to bring them together to begin to support, both our infrastructure expansion, but also our industrialization expansion as well. But ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to step back and discuss the impacts of COVID-19 on our lives. We all realize that the magnitude of disruptions that COVID-19 is causing in the quality of our lives. The COVID-19 pandemic, combined with the containment measures put in place by governments to limit its spread, have had important socioeconomic implications, thus affecting the quality of life of millions of Africans, especially the vulnerable group. However, the containment measures were necessary, and should the pandemic continue to spread, they will continue. The bank estimates that 49 million Africans could be pushed into poverty, with about 30 million jobs on the verge of disappearing. It is of utmost importance that a common Africa vision and strategy in the road transportation sector that is part of an African multimodal transport plan, very efficiently designed, is put in place in order to deal with the current issues of efficient logistics or the current issues of inefficient logistics chains to better integrate Africa and alleviate poverty. To conclude, please allow me to reiterate on behalf of President Adesina our appreciation of the fruitful relationship between the Africa Road Builders and the African Development Bank. We equally thank all those of you who contributed to the success of this 2020 final conference. Finally, this goes without saying, we will continue to keep in our memory Dr. Babacar NDIAYE, former president of the AFDB, who inspired this event and this forum. May God or Allah bless you all. Thank you.